I am Summer Brown. I'm a senior lecturer in Earth and Environmental Sciences at UK, and I'm one of the directors of Enviropods. We're here in Hazard, Kentucky, running our final Enviropods camp of the summer.
The Enviropods program is a learning program for late middle school students that exposes them to the technology and the science that we actually use to study these natural hazards.
Flooding, landslides, earthquakes, severe weather hazards. Kentucky is very geographically diverse, and that means that there's going to be hazards, different hazards, depending on where you are in the state. So, for example, in Western Kentucky, we focus much more on severe weather and tornadoes and talking about hazards related to karst. In Central Kentucky, we focused a bit more on river flooding, like big-scale river flooding. And then here in Eastern Kentucky and Hazard, we're focusing more on mountain-type flooding, like upstream flooding, and debris flows and landslides. So on our first day, we do an intro activity that kind of puts all the kids on the same page because we have some kids who are at different schools than others. We have some kids who are homeschooled. And so being able to kind of make sure they have all the common vocab is really important.
Okay, my name is Winnie, and I'm going in the 7th grade, and I'm 12. Today, we've been learning about erosion and just like crises people have around the earth with like weather.
And then we start to go into activities that could be everything from virtual reality to using the iPads and learning GIS to doing hands-on engineering type activities that help them learn about hazards and then also ultimately help them think about how they can individually prepare for those hazards.
I'm Mamie, and I'm an undergraduate at UK, and I'm a major in Earth and Environmental Sciences. I help out, I teach the kids about meteorology and earth sciences and natural hazards like tornadoes and earthquakes. I also helped a lot with like the lesson plannings and making activities. We get the snacks so the kids stay happy.
We do some hands-on, more kind of engineering type activities. We talk about water gauges and river gauges and some of the problems in upstream areas where they might not have nearby gauges. And one of the solutions to that might be having kind of local flood warning systems, like maybe if the river behind their house or the creek behind their house gets to a certain level, an alarm goes off. And so we actually have them build these gauges.
We got really creative with the river gauges. We ended up using magnetic door alarms that you would normally like keep on doors that would go off whenever doors open, so that if the river gauges worked, they would fall apart and then the alarm would go off. And so it would like alert people that, oh yeah, like maybe like water is rising and it like rose far enough that the magnets fell apart. So maybe you should prepare for the floods and get away.
And so they have a lot of fun doing that. It's really hands-on. They get to think about engineering. They get to think about design. They kind of have fun at the end, just making it look cool. And so I think the students have said that that's been one of their favorites so far too.
Of course. My name's Silas. I'm going into 7th grade at Hazard Middle, and I'm 12 years old. I'm excited working with drones because I like anything that flies, pretty much.
But in general, the students do get to fly the drones. This year, we have a LiDAR drone that the students have been using. We have a thermal drone, and we have a photogrammetry drone. And so you can think of that as 3D surface, thermal sensing, like a heat map of the ground. And then photogrammetry is just a high resolution, detailed picture of the ground. So LiDAR it's essentially a laser that shoots beams down, and then those beams return back. And so it gives you an idea of how far away that drone or helicopter or whatever it is from that. And you can use that to make a 3-dimensional surface map of an area. And it's so high resolution. The drone that we're using is like centimeters of resolution that you can see landslides that you might not be able to see otherwise, or how an area has changed after, say, for example, a big flood. And so we're using the data that we're collecting, and we're having the students compare that to previously collected data by the state of Kentucky, and they can see these changes that have occurred. And then in future years, we'll be able to rerun the LiDAR, refly the LiDAR, and even see the changes that have occurred over the life of this program.
I saw VR headsets in there, and I'm really excited to learn about those.
And then VR, because I think it's really cool with like all the different just like how you can be transported into a different world by just putting on like a mask.
they obviously love the VR. That's a real hit, especially when we go storm chasing in VR. They love that. We are library based. We can't take these kids on field trips, but I still want them to be able to see some of the things that we're talking about. So I spent much of this past year working in areas after Hurricane Helene, flooded areas after some of the floods here in Kentucky this past spring, 2025. And so I've been collecting 360-degree video and using that in the VR headsets. Fortunately, there's also plenty of things available online that we can do, like an earthquake simulation, for example. Storm chasing, the students are loving the storm chasing. So I take them out with teams from various colleges that have recorded videos. Famous storm chasers also take them and post them online. And so the students get to feel like they're there, right? When you're in kind of the VR headsets in 360-degree video, the students truly get to feel like they're part of that team storm chasing or part of our team doing surveys after floods have happened. So I came up with the idea for this project when I was driving across West Virginia. So I'm going from Kentucky, headed home to Virginia, and I was trying to think of a way that I could reach rural communities that might not have, colleges or universities located nearby. And I started thinking, okay, what infrastructure is already there? And then I started thinking about libraries. And so libraries are already places that are kind of like these knowledge centers in community. They're trusted, and a lot of times they have spaces that they're happy to let us use. It's been really great working with the librarians themselves. They've been helpful, they've been knowledgeable. They're really just excited to have this opportunity here for the kids.
Summer had actually reached out to me, and as soon as she kind of pitched to me what she was doing, I was completely in, and I went straight to my director, and she was all for it as well. So me and Summer kind of stayed in contact and got the ball rolling.
We saw this a lot at Hopkinsville. It was kind of like a community center. So it wasn't even just like a place where people came to like read or find a book. It was a place where people came and like hung out with everybody and like did a bunch of activities and just got to see people. So I think that's like, public libraries can be very community driven. So I think they're a really good place to be.
I like learning about floods and how they like impact the community because I've lived through several very big floods.
So the 2020 flood was devastating for our county, surrounding counties. A flash flood dropped about 12 inches of rain. We saw water come through our entire building. The mental toll that it took, like I was flooded at my home and then I was flooded here. So just not being able to get away from it and the sadness, and you go to the stores and everybody was just so sad and so down, and the kids were living in that. Some of their schools have been destroyed, their homes have been destroyed.
It wiped out a lot of homes, a lot of devastation.
And just trying to give them a sense of normalcy was what I think everybody was trying to do. But I think the effects of that 20 flood, we've still not seen mentally the effects.
It's really shook the nerves of a lot of younger people. And, this program is a really cool way to kind of alleviate that a little bit. I feel like it gives them a bit of a more kind of scientific, educational explanation as to why the things around us have happened.
When I first designed this program, I acknowledged that we were going to be in places that have been affected by various hazards, right? Many of these kids very likely have experienced some of these hazards that we're talking about. So it was really important to me to not re-traumatize them in a way that, would have a lasting negative effect. And I started working with an art therapist at University of Kentucky, and she helped me develop an activity that allows students to kind of touch base with their surroundings and nature and thinking about, okay, how can we think about our natural surroundings and use that to ground ourselves, to calm ourselves when we're feeling anxious about many of these hazards. The last activity that we do in every camp focuses on that. We go out in small groups, and they have a list of items that they're going to collect. And these are items associated with like a very common grounding exercise that's taught in therapy, where you're looking for like 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, and so on. And so we go out and we collect these. And while we do that, we are talking within our small groups about what they might have experienced previously related to some of the kind of scary things that we've been talking about, whether it's tornadoes or flooding. And so they collect all these items related to this, and then we come back inside and they use that to actually create a piece of art that represents them taking kind of their individual path to, grounding that they took, putting that together and working as a community to then build something that ultimately is beautiful.
Sometimes in a community, small community, you kind of feel forgotten and you kind of feel a little bit lost. And when you get a program like this coming in, it reminds everybody, hey, there's people that are actively trying to help us. There's people that are actively out there doing good work. And Enviropods is one of those things that we were so thrilled to get into our community. We just feel like it's a blessing.
It is an absolutely wonderful program, and I've been gung-ho for it since Summer reached out to me. I hope we get to see you guys again and, do this more often. Word gets out about it this year. I think it would definitely get bigger, but, next year and years after.
It's so fun, after, from day 1 to day 3, how much their character can come out. It is fun. We do these surveys at the beginning and the end. How I do remember specifically one time at our first visit to Hopkinsville, we ask on the survey at the beginning, what are your aspirations, what do you want to be when you grow up? And one time somebody at the end of the camp had changed what they wanted to be and added meteorologists and earth scientists to it, so it was very exciting for them to see that.
I'm looking forward to learning more about earth science and expanding what I already know.
Basically, this week, I just hope it's really, really fun and that I learn a lot of important stuff for future careers.
Well said. Good job, Winnie.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.